We want to become much more free. We want to become more self-aware. We want to become more grounded. All of those very important words. That is a growth in process experience. As long as you are alive, you've got some growing to do.
We learn out loud, and it's okay to be messy as we learn and grow and become better.
It really is that we are learning to communicate. And what is it that we're communicating when we're going into an arena of feelings like that? I personally like to think of it as play, because messing up isn't optional. It is mandatory. And even if you don't want to, it's going to be a thing. You can't avoid that.
We are still human, and this play, this discovery, this experimenting, this trying things on is a part of the human experience.
So do you know the opposite of play?
What?
The opposite of play, if you drop it out of your life, is actually depression.
Ooh, that's powerful.
So your play will have elements of what you love in it.
It's about like what it's all about, what it all comes down to. Feeling successful, feeling like you have a rich, dynamic life because you are playing in the realm of what you really love, of what really lights you up. We underestimate what's possible. There's so much to learn. If we can just come from that creative perspective, there is so much more available to us.
Get ready to love everything I am. All I want to be and understand. 'Cause I won't dim my light for no one.
Welcome to Popular, the show that will finally help you be seen and heard, because it's time that you made an impact with your voice. Your voice matters. It's time for you to be seen and heard and for you to make the difference in the world that you've always wanted to. I'm Carolee Garrison, and I'm here to interview experts on publicity, mindset, leadership, and more so that we can all discover how we can become our most magnetic selves. At its core, Popular is about knowing your worth, owning your unique superpowers, and using your gifts to make a difference in this world. What it comes down to is that if you are looking outside of yourself to feel important, it will never be enough. This is a journey of discovering your magnetic confidence from the inside out. Welcome to Popular.
Hello, it's me again. I was realizing that I feel like I start every intro exactly the same. And I was like, I need a new thing that's not welcome. So maybe I should sing, hello, it's me again. And just like sing you a song. Or not. I could also do that. But I think you get enough of me singing, through every single intro of this. I don't know. You'll have to let me know. Are you totally sick of that? Or should I switch it up? I might just switch it up. We'll see what happens. Who knows? I'm in a crazy mood. Anyways, I'm super thrilled. We have really just the coolest guests and a really incredible interview to share today. Dinalynn is really amazing. Like, this interview, I've been going through it and getting everything ready for this episode to air, and she's really incredible. Like, this is a mind-blowing episode, and you are going to learn so much about living a better life and how play will change everything for you. Like, really, her work on language and play is mind-blowing. So I'm extra thrilled to share this episode with you. So Dinalynn Rosenbush is a consultant and parenting coach, a speaker, and a 30-year public school speech language pathologist, an international best-selling author, and the creator and host of the Top 2% podcast, The Language of Play. Dinalynn helps parents understand how children communicate so they can connect more deeply with their children. And by the way, this is also how adults communicate, so it's really extra important, because when we understand ourselves better, we can understand our kids better, and it just goes full circle. She empowers parents with practical daily strategies for building speech and language skills during normal daily activities. Please be sure to check out her links in the show notes, because I know that after this you're going to want to follow up with her, because this is such important work that will change your entire life. So welcome, Dinalynn. Hi, Dinalynn. Is that how did I say it right?
Dinalynn.
Dinalynn. I'm so glad I asked. Dinalynn, it is so great to talk to you. I'm so passionate about this topic that we are here to chat about today. We are talking about feelings and how we have to put language to our emotions so that we can really deep dive into them. And you're going to say this so much better than I am saying it right now. We need a language to talk about our emotions. And this is what you are a specialist at. And that's amazing. How did you get into this work?
Thank you for asking, and thank you for having me on your show, Carolee. It's just an honor to be here today. So thank you. How I got into it was really that my work as a speech language pathologist in the schools, I was used to teaching vocabulary and used to teaching all kinds of how do you group it together? How do you make the world that just comes in through your ears? How do you experience that in 3D? To bring it to be understandable for kiddos that have delays in their understanding of speech and language. Well, along the way, one of the things that I have noticed is that oftentimes our kiddos don't have real good language skills in emotions. Why is that? That is often because we parents don't either.
Yes.
Yes. And so I didn't recognize this in my first years of teaching. Why? Because I didn't know that I also did not have emotional vocabulary that was strong. I knew what the word meant in a book when I would read a book, and that's fine. But what I didn't really know was when I have this experience of emotions in my body, what the label is, how to talk about it, and why would I want to? It felt like it was a downer if the emotions were negative emotions. And when I had really good high emotions, I didn't really have good language to say, that's great. And then beyond great, what do I say?
Right.
Well, what ended up happening over time is I started this parent coaching program. And my viewpoint was that I'm going to help parents know how to help their kiddos learn to speak at home. So our students that are having trouble, maybe they're getting services from me in the classroom or from another speech pathologist, but parents want to know, what do I do at home in order to enhance the communication so that we can really communicate with each other? Because I tell my son to take out the trash. He stands there, smiles at me, says okay, and walks the other direction.
Yes.
What is that about? Yeah,
Yes.
you've got kids, So I started to think, well, what is it that is going on that is missing? And we started looking at, auditory processing, what is going on with the information that's coming in. And then we'd also have these situations, and I'm sure you know this because you're a mom, that you'd have a total meltdown. And you'd wonder, what's going on? Why are they melting down?
Right.
And that is an expression of their emotions. Yeah. But they don't have the words because happy, sad, glad, mad, that's what we focus on. That's pretty much where we live here. I don't know if that's an American thing or if that's a Minnesota thing or if that's my family thing.
No, it's totally a thing. One of the most groundbreaking things that I ever heard was Brene Brown going, okay, the research says that people only know 4 emotions. Here's my book I wrote of the 80 some odd. I read it. I can't remember.
I did too.
Remember. Yeah, I'm I cannot remember how many there were, but I read her book of emotions of, tell me what it's called. It is called
I don't remember.
I cannot remember what it's called. She has
Brave.
She has so many books. Anyways, she has a great book about I gave it to my husband to read, so I don't even have it on my shelf. Yeah.
Bravely, I think.
So many. But so she has this dictionary of here's all the emotions, here's what they mean. And there's 80 of them. And we sit here and we're I could not come up with 80 separate emotions if I tried. And It's, oh my gosh, what? And that's the work you do. And it's so powerful to teach ourselves that we have more language ability than that. We have so much more depth than happy, sad, angry.
Yeah, that is true. And we all express that in one way or another. And for some of us, if we don't have the language for it, it comes out sideways. Passive aggressive, maybe aggressive. And for our kiddos, they're doing their behaviors too. So in my work, when I am working with parents, I find that they are just like me. They came from a family of origin where we don't talk about the negative emotions, We really just try to get done with that so that we can move on to the happy.
Because they're
And
not
then-
appropriate. They make
Right.
people sad. People aren't comfortable with it. They're scary. Let's just not.
So we
I can't deal with
ignore.
that. Mhm.
Right. Stuff it, ignore it. And then, like me, these parents come to adulthood, they have their own children, and they look at the behaviors of the kiddos and they start to think, I don't know how to get this child to behave better. But it's not necessarily about behaving because people tend to think of it as disobedience at that point. It's not a disobedience issue many times. Now, don't get me wrong. I know kids willfully disobey. That is a thing.
Yeah.
But that's not the time I'm talking about right now. Right now, I'm talking about the little boy, like I described, that smiles at you and says okay and walks the other direction. That is a behavior that is indicating something about their comprehension, and their behavior is communicating something to you.
Yes.
And in that particular moment, there is a miss somewhere in their understanding.
Yes. Behavior is communication. And what's
Absolutely.
really interesting about this is that our own personal behavior is also communication. We also
is.
need to pay attention to our own behavior. Like when we suddenly start screaming at our kids, or we suddenly, start screaming at the other driver because they're doing something and we're like, oh, where did that come from? That is your body is communicating to you that you need something, that you are not paying attention to yourself.
Right. And when we're surprised by the behavior that bolts out of us, imagine that our kids are probably the same.
Yeah.
They're surprised by the behavior that bolts out of them. Now, what is that? It's a trigger.
Yeah.
Right? It's not the guy in the car that cut you off that made you mad. It's how you perceived the cutoff. He may not have any idea that he did that, or maybe he's in a hurry. Maybe he was texting. I don't know. There's so many scenarios that could have happened. Maybe his wife's having a baby in the back seat. He doesn't care about your thoughts.
What's amazing about that is that, like, there's one point in time when some guy cuts you off and you're like, oh, I'm so compassionate. I bet something was terrible was happening. And then there's another time when the exact same thing happens and you blow up. And it all depends on what's going on inside of you, how you react.
Right.
And that's why our kids have such a hard time figuring us out, because sometimes we're patient and sometimes we're not.
Right. Right. And we have to give ourselves grace in those situations. And, the glorious thing about this is that we get then to go back to our kids and we get to practice. And what I have all of the parents that I work with do is print off just a general feelings wheel. Google feelings wheel, and you'll get this wheel. It's a rainbow colored wheel where it's categorized by the type of feeling it is. So you'll have a category, subcategory as you go to the perimeter of the wheel, and try to find the language that actually matches how you're feeling as best as you can. And then go to your child and say, I'm sorry I behaved this way. And then name the feeling, because you're dropping a bucket, a drop in the bucket of introduction to those words, that vocabulary for them. And so even that little bit, now there's more to this, but that little bit, you're showing them that, behaviors happen. Behavior is like what you do, what I do. It's all okay. Some is nicer than others, but that's okay. And then there's feelings. And then I know how to say sorry.
Yeah, and then I'm owning it.
Yeah,
I'm owning my behavior. My behavior is because of me. It's not because of you. It's because of me. My favorite quote that I say way too often is from Frozen, and it is, people make bad choices when they're mad or scared or stressed. And we could list every other, thing on that feelings wheel. People make choices when they're mad or scared or stressed. And what that really tells me is, like, my behaviors, my emotions, they're an inside job. And so are other people's. I'm not responsible for their emotions. Right. And so then I can have compassion because I know that they're stressed out and that's why they're lashing out. How can I help them be less stressed out?
Yeah. Maybe you want to go that far. If it's your children, we sometimes do, don't we?
Yeah.
But how many times don't we feel what our children do as behavior in public as if it is a strike against our parenting, a strike against how we've been raising them, and we're not doing a good enough job. So we get that cycle inside of our brain to judge us.
Yes, we are very codependent with other people and their behavior. And we're like, what does this mean about me? What you're doing reflects on me. And we don't just do that with kids. We do that with our spouses a lot. We do that with businesses. We do that so many areas.
We do, of course. And growing past that is, of course, what we want to do, right? We want to become much more free. We want to become more self-aware. We want to become more grounded. All of those very important words that is a growth in process experience. As long as you are alive, you've got some growing to do, right? So when we look at our kids now, and we think about their vocabulary, and then let me dial that back to imagine that every word needs to have some kind of exposure somewhere, somehow, about 500 times before it's going to be stuck in the vocabulary of that
Right. You
child.
can't expect them to use it if you've never used it. That's how kids grow in vocabulary. You have to start with it. It starts with you. It starts with you expanding that for yourself.
And as kids get older, that number of 500 gets less and less of exposure, but we still need to have many exposures to a new word in order to be able to use it in a context, to be able to identify it, especially like an emotion or feeling within our body, to apply it to the situation, put it into a sentence that makes sense to be able to communicate it to somebody. There's a lot of steps in that learning.
Yes, and I want to add in here that this is why it's so important as grown-ups that we expose ourselves to this, upper level stuff. This is why we listen to podcasts. This is why we read books. This is why we expose ourselves to that greater level of knowledge so that we can expand, so that we can hear it 500 times, so that we fully understand it, so that when we are using it with our kids, it doesn't sound super out of place because we don't actually know what we're talking about.
Which can happen. But this too is, don't wait. If you're a parent listening to this, don't wait till you really, 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 really know it right.
Right. Start practicing.
Just start doing it.
Yeah.
And then if you get in the ballpark and you speak it out loud, so maybe you've got that feelings wheel and you're going to take the word, you're mad. But then as you look at that wheel, you're going to realize, oh, really? I think I'm disappointed. And the way you're expressing it is anger. But really, you're disappointed, and you're not actually disappointed in your child. You're actually disappointed that the garbage bag broke when they picked it up.
Yeah.
If you stop for a minute and get past the immediate trigger of anger and think about what is making me angry, you could say the child, you could say the bag. But no, let's think about it. Disappointed. Let's think about it some more, and then get under it, and then talk to your child. I blew up. I'm sorry. I was mad. I was disappointed. Whichever word you use, say both. You start with one, you say another. Try to whittle it away as you're talking. They learn how to do it when they see you do it. So it is absolutely okay to use the words that you're practicing and not really sure of, and then you change your mind while you're saying it, and then you say to them, I think the word that I'm looking for actually is this.
Yes.
And when you speak the words of your own thought process, you teach them that they can think the words of their thought process.
Yes.
You're letting them learn to self-correct. You're letting them learn this is just a process. It's okay.
We learn out loud. We learn out loud, and it's okay to be messy as we learn and grow and become better and mature. And we get to let our kids in on that process.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It sounds interesting to say a specialist in the emotions of expression or something like that. But really, when you backpedal out of that speech title, it really is that we are learning to communicate. And what is it that we're communicating when we're going into an arena of feelings like that? I personally like to think of it as play. Because what we're trying out, any time we're experimenting, we're playing of sorts. There's lots of definitions for the word play. But if you roll it into a big ball and you think of play as a broad type of thinking, this broad thinking is going to be experimentation. It's going to be discovery. It's going to be fun sometimes, but maybe not all the time. It's going to be exploration. It's going to be trying something new. In other words, there's risk, right? And so we are demonstrating language that goes along with the play that our children need. And remember, the language that children's brains operate in, what they grow in, how they learn, is through play. So if we can enter that zone and get that mindset of curiosity when we get angry or when they get angry, and we try and we practice this, we get into that zone, pedal back, get into that zone of, I wonder or wonder what happened, just like that I wonder zone. We are better equipped to be able to teach our children than to step into it themselves, to become brave themselves, to be able to be kind then to ourselves when we mess up, because messing up isn't optional. It is mandatory. And even if you don't want to, it's going to be a thing. You can't avoid that.
Yeah.
And I think there's purpose in that. There's huge purpose in messing up.
I
So if you
love
think,
this.
yeah, and if you think about those purposes in messing up, we're developing ourselves. We're teaching somebody else how to handle the emotions of embarrassment, shame, guilt, all those tough emotions. How we handle it when we do it is how we teach our children they're supposed to speak to themselves, inside themselves, about themselves.
Yes.
So if we can learn to do this with ourselves, think of what happens with our children in their hearts and in their lives. And this is one of the foundational teachings that all of the parents that come to my coaching get, is that we need to talk with them about them being their kids and me being talking to the parent about how the language that is emotional language filters in and governs a lot of what we do. Because if we're also stepped back into only having anger as a word, we are shackled, we are entrapped, and we're stuck in not being able to really express ourselves. And that feeling is awful.
Yes. I love this topic of play. And I wanted to say that, like, as adults, we kind of have separated ourselves from play and declared it to be childish, and that experimenting and that curiosity. It's like, no, we must just get it right the first time. That is the only acceptable solution. And it's like, actually, we are still human. And this play, this discovery, this experimenting, this trying things on is a part of the human experience. It's incredibly important. And we need to model that for our kids. Like, you get to show up messy, try things on. And if they don't work, that's okay. Like, it's not a failure. It's just something you tried that didn't work and you learned from it. Let it be an experience that you grew from and then move on. You don't need to have that be a shameful, like, you can move. It doesn't need to be shame. You don't need to wrap it in embarrassment. It can be a beautiful thing to try something, not like it, and try something else.
As long as you do it and your kids see you do it, then they will be able to do it.
Yeah.
So do you know the opposite of play?
What?
It is not work. The majority of people think the opposite of play is work, but it is not. The opposite of play, if you drop it out of your life, is actually depression.
Ooh, that's powerful.
Isn't it? So, yeah, saying that, I get goosebumps.
Yeah.
I wish I could coin that, but it wasn't. It's been around for 20 years. And I Googled before I came on to this event today, thinking, who was it that first said that? And it's now ascribed to a lot of different people. So I don't know who the original person was. But it is so powerful.
Yeah, and I want to say that so much of who we are is like gathering bits and pieces of knowledge we've learned from other people. And like, that's so powerful.
Yeah. If you drop, Carolee, if you drop play out of your life, and play for you is going to look different than play for me. So I see on your wall, you've got music. So I'm going to guess that you love color. I'm going to guess you love music. I'm going to guess you love vibrancy of life, you know?
Yeah.
And how am I doing for a first guess?
Yes, I'm pretty sparkly.
I'm
wearing black and I have a black and white background, but I do kind of ooze glitter.
You've got sparkles on your shirt and, music, flowers, color, sparkles. Yes, so your play will have elements of what you love in it.
Yeah.
And if you were to drop all the sparkles, all the music, all the color, all the flowers, and all the books, this is what I see in your background.
Yeah.
If we were to drop those things from your life and now say, go play, you can probably feel it. I see it in your facial expression.
I know.
You kind of feel a tightness.
You kind of go like...
Yeah. And for me, it's not going to... I mean, I like those things too, but that isn't like the big, powerful thing. For me, if I have to drop play, I don't go outside. Like for me, it's climbing and kayaking and being outdoors. Yeah. For me, like my outdoor need is really powerful. And if I have to drop that And music is pretty powerful too.
Yeah.
But if I have to drop that, then I don't feel like I am who I am.
Yeah. Well, and I can tell you that I spent a good long time, a decade more of my life going, I can't do music. It's not possible for me. I've got to drop it. I'm not allowed. I'm a mom now. I can't pursue my dream as a singer. And I kept trying to take that out of my life, to not want it anymore. It was really depressing. Like that's exactly what it was depressing. And the renewal in who I am when I was like, actually, no, I'm going to be a mom and a singer and whatever, that's who I am. Like I get to be both. It reinvigorated my whole life. So I absolutely see that dynamic of play versus depression in my actual lived experience.
Right. And I have too. There was a time that I dropped dance. That's another one that I really love. And when I drop dance out of my life, it's that movement again. It feels like outdoors. It's just, anyway, I don't need to get into that. But the idea of dropping the part of you that makes you feel alive on the inside, that is, in essence, dropping your particular version of play. Yeah. And so when you're in the thing you love to do, you are willing to take risks. You are willing to discover, experiment, explore. All of those words that I was saying for play, when you're in your area, you do that and it's not scary. For somebody else to go in that area, it might not be their thing. It might not even be fun. It might not even be scary. So when we look at our children and we're trying to communicate with them and teach them to communicate for themselves to us, how important is it to let them really, really love Play-Doh, if that's what they love? And then you can do Play-Doh all kinds of places, and that is okay. And particularly for our kiddos with special needs, especially those with some neurodivergence, you're talking autism, you're talking some of those areas where you can have really some hyper focus.
They get really determined about what they want.
Right. Certain people will get very, very focused in on a very small amount of things. Yep. And if we can, for example, I worked with a student that really, really, really loved maps. And his mom was so astute. She said, well, if he loves maps this much, we are going to teach him math from the map. We're going to teach him reading from a map. We're going to teach him, and she taught everything. Yeah. And, it was super powerful because this kiddo did have autism and he had a lower IQ, and she used maps to be able to lead her son to function very, very well. And he is reading and talking and all the things. Yeah, and in the therapy sessions, we used maps.
Oh, that's so beautiful. And I have to say here that what really allows that to work is dropping the supposed to's, both as you're teaching children and as you're teaching yourself, that it's okay to show up in this area of play in the thing that you really love. You have to stop caring so much about what other people think.
Yeah. Which is hard, which is very hard.
So hard.
Depending on the background you grew up in, it's nearly impossible without help.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. But it's doable without help. And then you will feel more alive, more rich, more vibrant.
Yes. And isn't that what it's all about? What it all comes down to? Feeling successful, feeling like you have a rich, dynamic life because you are playing in the realm of what you really love, of what really lights you up.
Mm-hmm. And it goes beyond, when I first thought of this, because of my upbringing, my growing up, I thought, well, yeah, we get happy because I got an ice cream cone. That was great. And it's done. And now I'm not. But what I'm talking about is what you're clearly understanding, Carolee, is this deep joy that stays even if your ice cream cone falls on the cement. The thing that made you happy flops for whatever reason, but you don't lose the joy. The joy of I am alive and here is part of that same experience of not taking failure as ripping the carpet out from under you, but rather it is, oh, that didn't work very well. I think I want to try it this way. And it's only a speed bump, if that. It's just that we're moving on to the next thing, and it is okay. And when it comes to our kids, we get into this language that is using playful words, the discovery, the I wonder, let's experiment, let's see what happens next. Did it work? Did it work the way you wanted it to? We're asking, exploring beside them, looking at the thing, whatever that is. Maybe it's a temper tantrum. Did that work? How did that feel for you? That looked like it hurt.
Yep.
To go even into their behaviors with this kind of discussion that is language, that is gentle, that is kind. And they are getting themselves language to be able to interact. And ultimately, they then learn some emotional resilience and regulation to be able to do something else next time when that trigger hits them.
Yeah, absolutely. And I feel like we underestimate what's possible. Like something doesn't go the way we want, and then we try it again. And like when I was a kid, like I didn't play with toys. I wasn't like, yay, toys, typical. No, I had a hot glue gun in my hand and I was always making something new and like creating things. And it was a huge mess. And it was this whole thing. And now I'm finding out that, oh, I'm going to be teaching costume crafts and like hot glue gun in hand. Like, here I come. Like, this is like a real career that like I can do. And I'm amazed. And I'm like, I never thought this was possible for my life. And it's astounding to me. And it's like, we underestimate what's possible. That map, like we can learn so much from that map. There's so much to learn. If we can just come from that creative perspective, there is so much more available to us.
And it all starts winding it way back to the beginning of our conversation. What is that voice inside of you saying to you about you? And what is that voice we're using to our child about our child that they're incorporating into their language about themselves?
Yes, so true. This has been amazing. How can we find you? How can we follow you? How can we work with you?
Thank you, Carolee, for asking. My podcast is The Language of Play. Not surprisingly.
I love it. I love that name.
And
amazing.
Thank you. I do too. And my email is hello@thelanguageofplay.com. And I will give you a link tree that you can put in your show notes. And then eventually my website will be up and eventually the other things will be going. But let's just start with the link tree because I regularly change that. I offer webinars and different things for parents of kids that have some speech or language delays, how it is that you can help your kids at home, how you can join your hearts together, how it is that you can get them to be able to say sounds, make sentences, change what they need to change, interact more appropriately, whatever it is.
Oh, I love
my background as a speech therapist. I've done that for 30 years. So yeah, that's
amazing. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Thank you for letting me be on your show today. This is gloriously wonderful.
Thank you for joining us for another episode of Popular, your key to magnetic confidence. If you enjoyed today's show, please subscribe, leave a comment, and share it with a friend, someone who needs to know how much their voice matters. For more information on booking private sessions with me, as well as my available courses, check out caroleegarrison.com. Remember, when you know your true value, you glow from the inside out. Tune in next week for another reminder of just how amazing you really are.